The magazine Politics has recently published a worrying article about a British man who went to the US and visited a shooting range. Someone took a picture of him, which he later on published on social media. When he arrived back in the UK, to his astonishment, his house was raided, his computers and telephones were confiscated, he was taken to police custody and thrown into jail. He did not commit any offense at all whatsoever. In his police interview, it is reported, he was lectured about being very careful about this sort of things he's posting on the internet. His life had been ruined. He was unable to work for many weeks. He clearly did not commit a criminal offense, but nevertheless, he had to endure a very punishing process. I know a little bit about this process because I've been working as a criminal defense lawyer for nearly 30 years now, alongside my specialty in internet and the law. And one has to ask, for the reason why the police in the UK is arresting people for a conduct that the police themselves know doesn't amount to a criminal conduct. And the answer to this is that there is a concept that is called the punishment is the process and the process is the punishment. And this concept was set out very, very clearly in a great book by the writer Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was thrown into a gulag by Stalin. And under very difficult conditions, he wrote about his experiences and interviews with other prisoners and managed to smuggle out his writing, which later exposed the methodology of the Soviet regime. The idea is to create terror among the people without having to change the law, without having to exhaust the legal process. So you make the process very, very hard for just normal people who never done anything wrong in their lives. This is how you deter them, as well as others, from exercising freedom of expression. Fear of the regime, of course, is that the freedom of expression will be used against the regime itself. In his book, Solzhenitsyn brings stories which sort of demonstrate the extent of making the process hell for people, so as to deter them and others from doing anything that could possibly harm the regime. For example, the case of Dr. Azakov. Now, Dr. Azakov, in 1937, his medical practice was raided and the police confiscated jars of medicine, which they accused him of being poison. Of course, there was no truth to that, but that was enough to scare off many members of the medical and scientific profession. There is another story of Inushin. Inushin was an engineer, and tragically his son had died. Police raided the funeral under baseless accusations of spying. They couldn't find anything, so they opened the coffin, they threw the child's body out of the coffin and arrested his father. Another witness that Solzhenitsyn met in the Gulag was Boris Burkovsky. Now, Boris Burkovsky was arrested in 1945 under the serious accusations of buying a cake whilst wearing a uniform, which of course was not a criminal offense at all at the time. The cake was confiscated during the search. Now, no specific charges were mentioned to him at the time of his arrest, but his behavior was reported as suspicious by members of the public, which led to his arrest. And of course, there is the case of Hans Bernstein, who was arrested in a hospital whilst suffering from severe fever. He had 102, despite medical protest. And perhaps the most concerning story is the one of Yevgenieva Duyarenka, who was arrested in 1921. She was a teenager who wrote a personal diary, which she hidden even from her mother. Her house was raided. She was arrested because someone informed the authorities that she had a personal diary. There was nothing, of course, in the diary itself, but the idea of this particular case and all the others was to send a clear signal to the members of the public that there was no such thing as a private place. There was no such thing as a personal hardship. There was no such thing as compassion. The regime, the police, was able to access any place and every place under any circumstances and every circumstances, which of course, and this of course inflicted terror upon the entire citizens of the Soviet Union. Now, we cannot assume that the police is that stupid. We also cannot assume that they don't know the law. Of course they do. Now, not many people are aware of the fact that the police in the UK is working under the direct supervision and instructions of the Crown Prosecution Service. And the Crown Prosecution Service used to be headed for many, many years by the Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Now, it is very common for the Crown Prosecution Service to provide the police with directions. There is absolutely no way that police forces in the UK, under their own initiative, will go and arrest people for non-criminal offences. This has to be done under the instructions of the CPS, of the Crown Prosecution Service. So the question is, who is really giving instructions to various police forces in the UK to act in a way they do, to act as if they don't know the law? Who dictate that policy to them? Who tells them to knock on people's doors in the middle of the night, throw them in jail for non-criminal offences? And who is responsible for providing the Crown Prosecution Service with those instructions they can then delegate down to the police? The answer, I'm afraid, is very clear. These instructions would come from the government, all the way trickle down through the Crown Prosecution Service, effectively through the civil service, all the way trickle down to the police force, and then be directed at the people. So what can we do about this? The British people are notorious for being strong and resilient and being able to overcome adversity. The idea that the police will knock on your door in the middle of the night, pick you up, take your phone, confiscate your computer, look into the most private spaces of your existence is horrifying and is very un-British. If you do get arrested, if you do get a knock on the door from the police, do yourself a big favor. Don't say anything. Don't speak to the police. Don't answer any questions. Give us a call, or give any other lawyer a call, a lawyer that you trust, a lawyer who knows about how the criminal justice system works, a lawyer who knows about how the internet works, and do this before you answer any questions. Don't buy promises by the police that if you just say what they want to hear, they will let you go home, the process will be shortened, you'll be able to just get on with your life. Because if you do that, there's a real risk that you will suffer consequences for many, many years to come.